part of sanity is people's ability to actually understand the reality they live in so they can make good choices about how they want to go about navigating that reality. When there are actors that are creating false information with radically more capacity, meaning whole big companies, teams, AI-empowered analytics, etc., than the individual has to be able to parse it, it is kind of an asymmetric information war against the individual's ability to make sense of their environment. And so, of course, most people, we have lots of good social science studies show that it's pretty easy to make groups of people start trending their belief in certain directions by what you put in front of their newsfeed, by what you put on their television news, by, just like you can control their behavior with what ads you put in front of them for what they're going to buy commercially, which is why companies spend money on ads. But then how does an individual go about parsing that to really be able to make sense of the world when they don't have the same level of information tech? This is a tricky thing. Most of my friends who are serious about this have a pretty deep training in the sciences, a pretty deep training in epistemology and research itself. They do a profoundly deeper job of looking into the sourcing and the methodology, and they still have less certainty than most people about almost everything because they recognize how bad the information they're getting is. And so this is something that we have to fix. And we see this not just, so a couple examples. How long do we have with ocean acidification before we start having all the coral die and before we start having die off of phytoplankton in mass? Are we like a year away? Are we like 5 years away? Are we like 30 years away? That kind of matters more than almost everything. And notice that there's almost no one that has a clear sense of that, and anyone that claims to is pretty strongly contested by someone else that seems to claim to. How influential was Russia in the U.S. election, and was the Trump administration actually in connection with them or not? Is Fukushima actually releasing radiation and uranium that's affecting the Pacific Ocean or not? How near term are we to AI risk and catastrophe? Are Bill Gates and Zuckerberg's optimistic, or Elon and Hawking's pessimistic takes closer to true? You'll notice that for all the most consequential possible topics, nobody has any idea what the fuck is actually going on. That's a problem, right? So then people are like, well, if the experts can't figure it out, I'm not going to be able to. Let's just turn off sense making about the most important things, which means I have to turn off just paying attention to reality at all and just going about some little myopic orientation. That's not a well way to be, right? A well way to be is, what the fuck is going on? How do I navigate reality? Let me see if I can figure it out. But it's not really something that people are equipped or feel equipped to do. And then, you look at it in other spheres, like, again, you start looking at social justice movements that are happening, Me Too movements. How do you know when an allegation comes about, did the person really do it or did they not do it? How do you know how to respond to that? So there is profound difficulty in the ability to make sense of both what is true and what is right behavior in response to what's true. And we can get, without getting into what the solution is yet, we can get that these are problems that that should at least be central to our conversation, right? We should centrally be focused on, how do we go about knowing what's true? How do we go about getting rid of disinformation? How do we go about, and like in the Me Too movement, it wasn't even so much disinformation as people, disinformation meaning creating false information, as people hiding information, right? That allowed negative things to continue, abusive things to continue for so long. So how do we start getting an accurate information ecology? And how do we start having the right conversations about what the right strategic approaches to problems are? Do we have to change capitalism? Do we have to change government? What are the right ethical approaches to, some of these macro dynamics, I think at minimum, these should be more central to the conversation because they actually are central to what needs to happen.